Kwe Wilatasina Niki Pekasin, Tulusi Moyen, Tulusi Mato, Tulusi Phil, and welcome back to Tanka Impact. Today we're honored to have with us Mary Mallinger, an experienced conservation biologist and outreach professional who currently serves at the Minnesota State Zoo. With a rich background in environmental sciences, community outreach, and education, Mary is committed to making conservation a collaborative effort involving scientists, policymakers, educators, and the community. Currently focusing on bison conservation across Minnesota, she works tirelessly to restore and manage bison populations. Her dedication to making outdoor spaces more accessible and her belief in conservation as a social activity enriched by public engagement align with our mission to heal the lands and support Indigenous communities. Today, we're excited to share the collaborative efforts between the Minnesota State Zoo, the Department of Natural Resources, and Tanka Fund. Welcome to the show, Mary. It's a pleasure to have you.
Yes, well, thank you, first of all, for having me. Very glad to be here. As you mentioned, yes, I am Mary Mallinger. I work at the Minnesota Zoo. I'm a conservation biologist. So I focus on a few different things, but bison is kind of the big project that I help manage here with the Minnesota Zoo. So, and that takes many different forms. We have a variety of partnerships, but overall, we manage herds of bison across Minnesota, conservation herds of bison across Minnesota, in partnership, very close partnership with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. We've been working with them for many years now, and the program has grown and continues to grow, which is really wonderful. So we now have a lot of other partners that we're working with in addition to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and Tanka Fund is one of them now as well, which I'm super overjoyed to be working with you all. And yeah, it's been a bit of a process, and I'm just so grateful that we're here. And yeah, as I mentioned, we can get a little more into what exactly the kind of bison conservation work looks like, but overall, it's managing herds of bison for kind of conservation purposes in Minnesota, and it ranges in size, but it's approximately 100 to 200 animals usually every year that we kind of move around and manage for genetics and all of that fun stuff.
All right, that was a lot to unpack. I
Yeah.
really want to talk about like how the relationship became between us and you guys over at the State Zoo. But before I
Yes.
even go into that, something you said really caught my attention. So you spoke about becoming a conservation biologist. Why and how did you even fall into that? Like, where did
Yeah.
that begin for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's well, I mean, honestly, it's kind of a dream job. So I'm really grateful to do the work that I do, and it's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and I really always have been. But I definitely, when I was younger, didn't really imagine that I would necessarily be doing this. I think partly because I just didn't know what it looked like. Well, what does that mean, to be a conservation biologist? But I did. Yeah, I've always been kind of an animal lover, and always thought I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was younger. And then when I went to school, to a university, I sort of realized that I think my connection to wildlife and the natural world was just getting stronger and more noticeable, and really kind of guiding my life more than maybe I anticipated, in a really wonderful way. So I actually ended up switching paths, and I got my undergraduate degree in wildlife ecology. So that's kind of where it all started. And that really is just the study of wildlife. So it's the study of wild animals, but also ecosystems and environments and all of it, which is really wonderful and fascinating. And I loved it so much. I knew I was in the right place. And then I did some graduate work also in similar environmental sciences. So also studying wildlife and natural. I studied forest insects actually. So a little bit different. And then, yeah, over the years, it's just taken lots of different kind of forms. I've had a few different jobs, including some that have focused a little more on community engagement and communications, which I'm also very passionate about. So, and then landed here at the Minnesota Zoo, and it's just been really a perfect fit for me because I get to do both the field work and the biology and the wildlife conservation work, which I'm so incredibly passionate about. And I also get to do lot of a bit of writing and communications work and things of that nature, which I'm also really passionate about. So I somehow managed to find a job that has, the best of both worlds for me. So
That's awesome. Not everyone is so lucky to find that. So being able to go
yes,
from, insects to buffalo, like that's a huge gap
I
there.
know. I know.
And I think I think it's one of the things that is most rewarding about, working in this type of field, is because you get to, you get to really see like the whole gambit of things. And although you wear multiple hats, so to speak, you get to experience a whole variation of things. Your job is likely never the same from day to day.
No,
Definitely
no.
not year to year.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that is so that I love so much about this job and this field is that you see more and more the connections between insects and bison, right? So that's one of the things that I love so much about this job is that so many of the yes, like the actual skills, certainly so many of them translate. Doesn't really matter what wildlife species you're working on, a lot of it can kind of translate. But of course, there's nuances, right, between studying bison and studying prairie butterflies. But there's so much overlap as well. And they are so intimately connected as everything in the natural world inherently is. And it has become more and more clear to me how true that is. So I love that. It is awesome that it like seems like such a big leap. And the more I do it, I'm like, actually, it's a really not. It's really awesome.
Yeah, full circle. Matakias,
Yep.
as we say, it's all related, right?
Yep.
But one thing that, yeah, the thing I like about that too is like because it's not just like the insects or the bugs and the buffalo, right? It's also the soil, it's the seed.
Exactly.
And then one of the things that Molly from the DNR that we worked with over at Blue Mounds, we took a photo of it and it's up on our website. But it's basically the buffalo fur is kind of like a Velcro, and
Yeah.
it picks up all of these seeds, it picks up all of this dirt, all of this well, bugs too. It picks it all up.
Yep.
And then when we transfer or when they move wherever it happens to be, they take all of that with them and they basically reseed the ground as they kind of go,
Yeah.
which is why they were a keystone species back in the day, or one of many reasons why.
Yeah.
But one thing that I spoke to one of our ranchers, Austin, over at the German ranch that we have in Peaver. He was super stoked, and so was his father, because the seeds that came from Blue Mounds are now going to be put into their fields, and it's like high
So
grass.
cool.
It's tall grass. This is the type of seeds that were there. And I
Yep.
guess that type of grass is not common out in the South Dakota area. It's actually not common in a lot of places nowadays. So they were
Right.
really stoked to see that, because he was looking at it. He's like, "Oh man, is it a few years? I'm gonna have such great grass!" Like they were really excited about it, right? And this is
So
one of the
cool.
small things you don't think about when you think about what happens when the buffalo move, right?
Yep.
And it really has colossal impact on well, like we say, the lands, lives, and economies of indigenous
Yep.
people. It's a
Yep.
huge impact. um,
Huge. Yeah.
so super stoked about that, and they were really excited about it, and
Oh,
like,
that's so cool. I'm so
yeah,
glad to
and to
hear.
actually see that, and actually like see all the different seeds like in the buffalo tuft that was there that
Mhm.
came off, and all that, like it was really fascinating, and really something that it's exciting. It's exciting to be able to be a part of that, and again, like as you mentioned, as it all kind of connects.
Yeah.
You don't think of that all the time, but when you're out in the field and you're there and you see it, yeah, I mean, you really do feel what that impact is going to be, and
It's much more evident. Yeah.
yeah. um the next thing I kind of want to talk to you about is like, so obviously for those who are listening and hearing what we're saying, one of the things that we've been working on for quite some time, obviously, is our partnership with the Minnesota State Zoo.
Mhm.
We recently did two releases, one from Blue Mountain State Park and one from Minneopa. We were there at both. We experienced both,
Yep.
and we moved about 40 buffalo thereabouts back to their ancestral homelands, both in different areas, one up towards Fond du Lac and then one towards South Dakota.
Yep.
Um, and I really want to talk about what that took to make, because it sounds simple and straightforward. It sounds like it was easy, but you and I both know that it was not. And it wasn't that way for a lot of reasons. But can you describe, like, one, how this partnership even began and kind of like walk me through how we came to the state park that day,
Yeah,
as best you can?
absolutely. So in terms of the beginnings of the partnership, it really did start with, so I went to a bison conference in South Dakota in Rapid City, and this was like 2.5 years ago. And um and I, was just kind of the first night there's a dinner, right? A welcome dinner. And I just was mingling with people, meeting various folks. A lot of it was very new to me. A lot of the people were and organizations were new. And I happened to just sit down at a table next to a woman, and I, turned to her and just asked her her name and who she was. And it was Arnell from Tanka Fund. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of vaguely, I had heard of Tanka Fund, but didn't know that much about the kind of nuances and details. And she immediately just, showed me a couple of videos on YouTube, which was awesome. Was like, I think this video can better explain what we do than I could with words. And after we kind of kept talking, and then I was like, this is such a natural partnership, because we've been looking for opportunities like this as our herd and our program is growing. We really have been looking for these kinds of partnerships and this opportunity. So it really felt very natural. And we just continued to chat over the next few days of the conference. And then, when I came back, we just stayed in touch, and it really grew from there. And it became like, it in so many ways it was really easy, right? Like the like concepts were so easy, because it was something that was clearly, we both, like, both partners wanted and would benefit from, and also felt like very much the right thing to do. And so in that way it was really easy. The logistics of it, a little less easy. So yes, I mean, a lot of it again is just, you look back on it and you're like, well, logistics, logistics, like, whatever, you get over it.
Yeah.
But it was a little challenging for sure, because there's just a lot of, as anyone who's worked with like wildlife, but especially bison, are really interesting. I mean, you could have a whole like podcast episode about this, but just the way they are kind of treated and seen from like a state level and a federal perspective, as quote unquote animals and quote unquote livestock, because they're often treated as such. So there's really interesting regulations and rules around like where they can move and to whom, and when, and all of that stuff. It's definitely not as easy as just, you put some bison on a trailer and you drive them a couple hours to a new ranch or prairie and you release them. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of health testing that goes into it, because of concerns with disease and possible crossover with cattle, and the other way around, right? Cattle to bison and things like that. So we live in a complex world, as everyone knows, and so there's just a lot of moving parts we had to kind of figure out, and it actually fell through the first year. So we really, we're hoping that we could work with Tanka Fund and rehome a lot of the bison, but for various reasons that really were just purely logistical. It had nothing to do with, like I said, we both were very much, both organizations very much knew where we wanted to go, but we mostly kind of ran out of time, honestly. So we had to
Yeah.
have some language change. It actually went all the way to the legislature, which was really, I mean, it was really great, because there was such support from the governor, from the commissioner, from, like, really on all levels to support this initiative. And eventually, long story short, we kind of got the paperwork, got everything signed. And then from there, it really is, as working with any other, ranchers or producers or organizations, like, then there's just the actual logistics of how do we move this many, like, where are the trailers coming from, and
Uh,
what day is going to work, and how do you combat weather and time of year, you got to pick a good time of year, and
yeah.
um
I,
and
I, I think that you're really underselling how tricky it is.
I probably am. I probably
Because,
am.
just from what you've said there, I just want to double back a quick moment because like you guys helped change state legislature to make this
Yes.
happen. And I
Yes.
do not want to undersell how difficult that is. It's like
It
that is
was a
a
lot.
lot of paperwork. It's a lot of work in the background. And it's not easy to change laws, and
No.
it couldn't have happened without all the diligence from you guys over there working on it and being like, no, we are going to make this happen. Like this is what we want to do. We believe in the cause. We want to make sure that this is something that we're able to do, and we're going to change the way this is worded because it's silly that we can't,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So
Yep.
I really don't want to undersell that. Like
No, you're
the amount
absolutely right.
the
Yep.
amount of work you put into that, and your teams over there that put into that, we'll always be eternally grateful for that.
Yeah.
There's no sugarcoating that or bumping around it. Like that's a lot. It really is, and we truly do appreciate it. And because of that work, we were able to do that transfer this year. We were able
Yeah.
to move those buffalo across state lines back to their
Yep.
ancestral homelands, and that just simply wouldn't have happened without that work. So I really want to,
Yeah.
props to you guys. That could not have happened without the hard work from you guys over there. So I do want to, really shine the light on that
Thank
because
you.
it deserves it. Like you honestly, it's like it's nothing short of a miracle from what you did. It truly it is. And again, that doesn't even count all, like you mentioned, all the logistics to actually figuring out how to move buffalo, because what most people don't see on the back end, you see a lot of what we're working on, and obviously we get to see the footage at the end where everything's great, but what you don't see is all the hard work that happens in the background, the figuring out which trailers are going to be there, how many are going to be there, how many
Mhm.
buffalo can we move, how many need to remain. Again, the weather events, like you mentioned, right, is like you have to catch it at the perfect time of year, because if it's too hot, you can't move them.
Right.
One, because it's dangerous, and two, because the buffalo also just won't allow it. And
Right.
I think that's another aspect that I can go into in a minute. But and then if it's too cold, you can't move them then either, because same reasons, right? It's too dangerous to move them, and
Yeah.
it could cause great harm to them. And obviously, we're just trying to avoid that at all costs.
Yes.
So you really have to find like that niche spot where the weather isn't bad, hot or cold.
I
So
know.
it's tricky, right? And that involves a ton of people, because it also, it's not just the trucks and the transport, but then you have to figure out a way to corral them from where they're at in the park, to bring them into a
Mhm.
facility, to hold them for a very limited time, so then you can do all the checks you need to, the vaccines, the medicine, to make sure they're healthy, all the just basic checks that you want to make sure is good before they actually move. And that requires people, it requires labor, it requires time, it requires dedication. There's a lot of things that fall into that, outside of just, scheduling it on a piece of paper and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then lastly, and the most probably probably the trickiest, I would argue, out of all of this, including the state legislature, is getting the buffalo to choose to go on the truck.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say. Yep, that is
We
always the tricky part. And it's so, I say this every year, and no matter what we're doing, like working with them is so, and with them is so humbling, because we're so used to as humans being able to dictate, right? Kind of what we want when we want, and we're kind of spoiled in that way, and right, but they are just, oh man, I mean, they are magnificent and incredible, and they are stubborn, and like you cannot get a bison, you cannot get an individual to do something you don't want them to do. So if they're like, no, like I'm not getting on that trailer today, there are, there's not a whole lot you can do. So that is always the trickiest part.
Yep. And it takes literal hours if you just
Yeah,
get one. So if you're moving 20, if you get one buffalo that's just like, you know what? Not today. And
exactly.
that
Yes. And they,
happens.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
that
Like
one
it
sets
like
the tone.
it sets a
Yes. And then
tone,
they
and
all decide that they're following that one. Yeah.
yep.
As you saw, we had that issue, right? There was one who just was being, had its agenda, which they will do, and they're
Hmm.
entitled to. And then all the other ones just followed suit. So it was like, oh man,
Yep,
this
exactly.
is,
It made for a
this is
very
tricky.
interesting and very long day.
Yes, it
So
gets
even when
tricky.
everything goes right, something can still go wrong. I think the moral of the story on that.
Yep.
Uh, and yeah, like I said, it's just a ton of work, but it's very rewarding, obviously. And
Very.
then it's part of that partnership that we were able to establish and go through. You guys were able to see some of the end game of that, right? Like that was the goal from our end, is to make sure that you guys got to see and experience, kind of with us, really what that end game looks like, right? And if you guys haven't had an opportunity, we have a video up on our YouTube where you get to see the buffalo, and I can't explain this any other way than dancing, because that's what it appears they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like in the
Agreed.
video, the buffalo that we got from Minneopa State Park from you guys joined a herd that was already up at the Wise's Ranch. And when they were introduced, this is a story I want to tell. So we initially introduced them to a pen that's kind of separate from the main herd, and we do that because of two reasons: one, health concerns, but two, and more importantly, we want to make sure that the herds, um, are amalgamating well, so that this way, if they don't fight, right? We want to make sure that they are going to be okay with each other. It's the same as introducing new people to anyone as well, right? Like you go into if it's first time meeting someone, you kind of are trying to gauge how they are in comparison to you. And it's the same way with Buffalo. They're the same way when it comes to that. So they're kind of like trying to figure out, if it's like, hey, are you cool? Are you cool? Are you family? What are you? Right. And that's what we saw up at the Wises, was they were looking at each other. But the incredible thing about the Wise Ranch, and this is something that I have not experienced before. The buffalo that was there knew that buffalo were coming home before they even arrived. They were waiting at the gate. They were there. The majority of the herd was just waiting. And when the trailer came up and the buffalo came off, they were like, all of the herd kind of just moved towards the front of the gate, and they were all like waiting. It was almost like they were sitting there going, you know what? Our family's coming today. We know this. And it became more apparent to
Wow.
us as they were kind of like integrating with each other a little bit, just where the fence was. Because the buffalo that were coming from Minneopa started trying to squeeze through a fence. And I kid you not, like the fence size, the hole had to have been no more than like a desk, like, and I would say less than that, like maybe a chair in length, like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that way, right? And Fun fact about buffalo, they're actually cats. They turn into liquid and can fit through things. So
Yeah.
we had three buffalo squeeze through this small little portion of fencing.
It's
Like they just
crazy.
got through, and they went and joined the rest of the herd. And like they were adamant that they were going to do this.
Yep.
And those three ran off. They kind of surveyed the property a bit, but then they came back into the fence where their family was, and they were just sitting there and they were just waiting. They were like, guys, we're here. Why aren't you out? What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it caused
Join
the
us.
inside to continue to hit the fence. Like they were ramming it. Like they were going full tilt. They're like, we're coming through. We're coming through. And then Dave, he's the caretaker up there. He finally is like, I should open this, shouldn't I? And then we looked at him and we were like, it's your call, but I mean, they're gonna break through that
They
fence.
seem pretty determined. Yeah.
They're going to go through it, because as you mentioned, they're stubborn.
Yeah.
And they had made up their mind. They were like, nope, we know these buffalo. It was like, we know this family. We are going to join them now, and the
Mm.
fence is going to stop us. So yeah, inevitably what happened was we opened the fence. Right, Dave opened the fence, and then you got that video that we put out where the buffalo literally ran together around the property. They went all, and they didn't even cover all of it. They just went like through a portion of it. They did this huge circle, all of them together, and they were like kicking their heels back, and like they were literally dancing. Like I can't explain it any other way, but like you could feel the joy from them. Like you could feel the joy. Like you just knew that they were happy.
So
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
and all of that couldn't have happened without the efforts that we did that day, right? It just couldn't have. And it
Yeah.
was
It's
it was
really
really,
beautiful.
really amazing. It was an
Yeah.
amazing experience overall. So yeah, I mean, like, hopefully you guys got to see that, or at very
We
least feel
did.
that like we
Yes.
did,
I'm so
right?
grateful for that. Thank you. Yeah. It's a beautiful story and beautiful footage, and all of it is, yeah, we're just so grateful. I mean, it feels like the least we could do, but we're very grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to could you just talk to me a little bit about like how that changed you guys? Because, you know, we talked about the beginning of this, we talked about, you know, all the paperwork and the logistics and everything. And I think this is your first time like releasing Buffalo in this way.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong there.
No,
Um,
you're right. Yep.
but talk to me about how your feelings were about that. Like when we went from, you know, oh, a paperwork dream to reality, and what kind of happened? Like, because like, and you know, I mean, you're going to generalize a little bit with some of the staff too there, but you know, I really do like, I personally feel like there was a moment where everything kind of just clicked for you know
Mhm.
everyone who was working on this, not just you or me for that matter. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. You did not imagine that. I think that's very true. It's one of those situations where you conceptually know that it's what you want to do and it's the right thing to do, and it feels, it feels right. So you're kind of like, okay, great, we're going to go through the motions of putting this all together, getting the paperwork sorted, right? But I don't think for me actually, when it kind of really clicked was meeting the Wise family when they came down, and just like having, again, it's like I'd emailed with them. I knew kind of who they were, but then actually meeting them in person and just talking to them, and I could just feel the excitement and the joy and the gratitude, and even the little kids, they were just so sweet and overjoyed. They were like, those are our buffalo, we're going to bring those ones home. And it just, again, it's like I kind of knew that it was bigger, right, than just, oh, we're moving buffalo around, but that made it feel very real because you can connect it to individuals and to people, and hearing Arnell and Patra Wise and you, and even talking to Austin German a bit on the phone. I didn't get to meet him in person, but I've talked to him on the phone a bit. Like, even just hearing you all talk about the significance, and also just kind of how it's very personal. It feels very personal. I shouldn't, I'm kind of projecting, but I'm assuming, but it seems to me like it just felt very personal. Like each of you
It
had
is.
kind of, yeah, a very like unique and personal kind of perspective and relationship and feelings about it all. And I mean, overwhelmingly, it was excitement and joy for sure, but also complicated, right? Like, it's definitely a complicated story in history. And so I think, it was just important for me to remember to kind of let that soak in, like that's not an insignificant part of the story, right? It's not, it's, in fact, it is the story.
It
And
is
so
the story. Yeah, it's
exactly. So
just as
so
important as them returning home.
exactly, right, exactly. So it felt very, very real, but just, it felt very big, is maybe the best way to put it. I don't know how else to word it. It's just, it felt big, and not big like, like monumental in the kind of typical way we think of it, more like big as in almost like timeless big, if that kind of makes sense. Like
It does. It's
yeah,
one of those things that you feel like the impact you're making isn't just affecting today because it's
exactly.
not.
It
It's not.
like went, like it's just like this moment where you're like, oh, you're kind of both a part of very much the present, but also history and the future. And in reality, that's always the case. But you just, sometimes you have moments, right, where that's very palpable. And I think that was some of the moments, at least for me. So yes, it was all very powerful. And I'm so grateful and glad that you and Arnell and that the Wises and Germans were able to kind of travel and come down and meet people too, because that was really, really great. And I know that is the case for other staff as well. Like, they so appreciated kind of hearing who are the people and where are the buffalo going exactly, and then
Yeah.
having a face to the name and everything was important. I think it meant a lot. Yeah,
Yeah, and you know, we were grateful to be even invited. So we
of
loved it.
course.
Like we loved every aspect of it. And you know, I'm speaking a little bit for Arnell here, but like, you know, we live for this. This is something that, you know, is really important. Like you mentioned, it's personal, right?
Yeah.
And just being able to do that and go out there and experience that and then, you know, bring those stories to, the rest of the world or anyone who wants to listen. That's equally important too, because at the end of the day, that's where it goes back to. It goes back to not just returning the lands, lives, and economies back to people, but it's like it's deeply, deeply personal, because when these buffalo go back uh, home and they go back to their caretakers, like as you mentioned, is like it's generational, right? Because these
Yeah.
kids that were there, who were seeing their buffalo, right, their buffalo,
Yeah. Yeah.
they were naming them and everything,
I
and
know.
it's that once we're gone, those kids are going to keep the reins. They're going to keep returning buffalo back, and they're going to keep that long legacy moving forward. So it's yeah, it's just very rewarding for us now, and it's going to be rewarding for them in the future, right? We're changing people, and that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned earlier, like with the grasses and stuff too, like I just think about the the impacts on, the non-human parts of the natural world too, right? Like just
Yeah.
those kind of effects, like bison are just so incredible in so many ways. And a lot of it, their kind of impact on an environment, on a landscape. So it also just feels big in that sense, right? Like they will fundamentally shape that landscape, as they historically have and are meant to do, which is also really cool. So it's big on many levels.
Yeah, it really is. I only have one last thing I actually want to ask you about, and that's because this cracked me up a lot when we were talking about him. I want to talk about Brutus. Let's talk Brutus. For those who
Okay.
do not know, I'll just describe Brutus a little bit. I have not had the pleasure of meeting Brutus, but he is a very formidable buffalo who is at
Sure
Minneopa.
is.
And there's a story there, and I would like you to kind of talk to us about Brutus, give us an idea of his personality, and what's the next steps for Brutus.
Yeah. So Brutus is a mature breeding bull, and he's actually currently he's kind of been in a couple locations. He's actually currently at the Minnesota Zoo, and he's just magnificent. Like he's gorgeous. I mean, he really is one of the larger male bison I've ever seen. And I've asked other people this as well, and they're like, yeah, he's definitely like up there. And a lot of it is his head. Like his head is just huge. And he's got this amazing mop of like shaggy hair on the top of his head. and
How
and
big do you
he's
think he is?
he is we when he was measured, like weighed in a few years ago, so it could fluctuate, so it could actually be more, but we know that he has weighed in at over 2,000 pounds.
Wow,
So
that's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. He's actually, fun fact, he is currently, in terms of weight, the largest animal at the Minnesota Zoo, like individual animal at the Minnesota Zoo. So he's incredible. And he has been here for a while. He is also very, very stubborn. I mean, they right, like we talked about, they are
Yep.
often, but he kind of has a reputation for really not doing what we kind of gently ask of him. So like with our veterinary staff, for example, like they have to come up with creative ways to like give vaccines and things like that, because he won't just go through like a pen, you know what I mean, that we're kind of asking him to, where we can, kind of collect a DNA sample and maybe give him a vaccine. Absolutely not. So, and the thing about him that is can also be a little difficult is he'll prevent any of the other members of the family of the herd from doing it. So he'll just literally like physically block the pathway if he's like, I don't like this situation. I'm just, we're not doing this today. He'll just stand there. And like we talked about, you really can't. I mean, you can't do anything. It's really actually fascinating, and as I'm sure a lot of like listeners and people know, but it does go back very much to kind of their like evolutionary survival instincts. Like if you've ever seen, footage of bison in the wild and stuff, like one of the ways they protect their young and they're kind of the elderly and sick and things like that, is they will just form a wall, like a physical wall, right? A barrier, like, against a pack of wolves, for example. And it's like, you can't penetrate. They can't penetrate it. They can't do anything with it. And they just lock down and they refuse to move. And so they will do a similar thing, right, in this setting if they're like, I'm not doing this today. So yeah, he's he's a he's awesome and he's formidable and so he really runs the show up there. And we are also really excited that he's going to be going to the Wise Ranch as well, pretty shortly here actually, which is really great. We manage the bison herds, as I mentioned. A huge component is for genetics and for diverse. So you have to ensure, right, that you don't have inbreeding, that you have high diversity. It's, a part of caring for the species and for them as an individual, right, is to make sure that they are healthy, right, both physically and genetically. So it is good. It's going to be, we're really grateful that he's going to such a wonderful home. I know the Wises are like really excited
Oh, they're super
to
stoked. Yeah,
welcome
we
him.
were
Yeah,
talking
they're
about
really
Brutus
excited.
during it. So
Yep. Yes, they're very excited to welcome him there. And he'll have, an entirely new like family and dynamics and new breeding opportunities and a new landscape, which I know will be, really good for him, but also really good for the population and for the species. And so yeah, we will miss him, but we're also really honestly looking forward to, it's like the best possible home we could think of for him. And like I said, he's been here for many years, so he will do. We're confident he will do well because he will show them his personality will become evident very quickly. So
yes. Yeah, no, I'm really excited, and it's it's never goodbye with us.
no,
Brutus, well, his stories will be told throughout the years. You don't worry, I'll make sure that you'll be able to see
oh, I'm sure.
Brutus, and you'll be able to see him thrive
Yes,
over at the Wises, and I'm sure Dave and Petra will also share those stories because again, like they're super excited. I think we're all really excited for him. One because of how notable of a personality he is. Uh,
yes,
but two, because he's gonna thrive there, right? And that's
yeah,
what we
he
want
will.
at the end of the day. We want them to be able to thrive and grow and just enjoy their existence. So yeah, really really excited to see where that goes. So
Us too, yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And it opens up, it's also kind of exciting too, because it opens up an opportunity to bring in a new breeding bull here at the Minnesota Zoo in the coming years, which we're also, excited about. Again, it's always, it's important since we don't have they're not functioning on the landscape in most places like they were historically, right? We don't have huge swaths of tallgrass prairie in Minnesota, unfortunately, left where they can, kind of migrate through, and there's multiple families and herds that interact with each other. We kind of have to do that almost for them, right? Because we just don't have habitat like that for them left in Minnesota for the most part.
Well,
And
I would argue
so
that's probably in most cases, most
in
places
most cases,
nowadays. Yeah,
exactly, it is. Yeah.
as we've expanded over where they would traditionally
Yep.
be. So
So yeah, we're also kind of looking forward to welcoming someone new. We don't know who or where he'll be coming from, but that's always kind of an exciting new opportunity too. So
yeah, no, for sure. And maybe there's opportunity to partnership in that later on down the road. Who
yeah,
knows? We'll find out.
yep,
Uh,
absolutely.
but yeah, I mean, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for us. Thank you so much for all the efforts that you've put in personally, and then obviously your teams as well. We're eternally grateful for that, and we really do look forward to working with you alongside you for the future. And just even sharing the stories that are going to become out of this. I think it's really magical. Like I don't have another better word for that, right? And I am just truly humbled by the efforts that you guys did, and you literally changed laws. So I mean, what else there is to say, right? So well, Lala, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the show and just talking about that too. And I'm really looking forward to our next journey. So
Yes, me as well. Well, thank you all, really, truly, thank you. I mean, like as I mentioned, it feels like the least we can do, and it has been fought like as you mentioned, the reward and just I mean, it is all like far greater than the annoying logistics that we had to go through to get there. So, we're incredibly grateful and really excited to continue to work with you all at Tanka Fund because it's, such an admirable mission, and the work that you do is super important. So we are very, very, very appreciative that we get to support your mission.
Well, and for that, Mary. Before we wrap up today's episode, we'd like to invite you to discover more about the Minnesota State Zoo and its impactful conservation efforts. Whether you're planning a visit, interested in their educational programs, or looking to support their initiatives, head over to mnzoo.org, explore the wonders of wildlife, stay updated on upcoming events, and find out how you can get involved in making a difference. That's mnzoo.org, your gateway to connecting with nature and supporting conservation action. And of course, Tanka Impact is proudly brought to you by Tanka Fund, a Native American-led 501c3 nonprofit organization. Tanka Fund is dedicated to returning the lands, lives, and economies to Native American people. To learn more and find out how you can contribute to this important mission, visit tankafund.org. That's TANKAFUND.org. Join us in shaping generations today.